Hi, and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Rogue's Phantom class specialization from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. A Phantom is a rogue who has experienced death so often that it has now become part of their very being, giving them some level of control over the necrotic powers of the dead. These are characters who deal in death, talk to death, and have become death, and the more experienced a character becomes with this class specialization, the more potent that power becomes. Any player who chooses this particular subclass is most likely, but not necessarily always, going to be of the lawful evil or chaotic evil alignments, mainly due to how much death they have to have witnessed or have had a hand in relation to gaining this particular subclass. It may be possible for other alignments to work with this subclass, but it's going to be one heck of a backstory as well. That player's going to have to do a heck of a lot of fast talking in order to get it past the Dungeon Master. Rogues get to select their archetype at level 3, thus giving you time to make up your mind. But before we start looking at the features, let's go ahead and level this character up so that we can choose our class specialization. And in this case, I want the Phantom. And the first feature your character will receive is called Whispers of the Dead, and it allows your character to choose a proficiency in a skill or tool as needed each time your character completes a short or long rest. This means that if your character lacked the proficiency in acrobatics, but you knew there was going to be quite a bit of climbing or some other thing that might require your character to make acrobatics checks, you could put your character through a short or long rest and then add that proficiency to that particular skill. And it would work the same way for different kinds of tools, like thieves' tools or things like that. Because of your link with death, your character can make use of the knowledge the dead took to their grave and call upon them to lend that knowledge to your character for a time. However, this proficiency will remain in place until your character chooses to make use of this feature again to change that out. So, for example, our character here is lacking proficiency, say, in athletics. I could choose to make them proficient with athletics. I'll leave it that way for now. At some point later on, let's say now all of a sudden I'm being put in an investigative role, I can reuse this particular skill, get rid of the athletics proficiency, and put the proficiency in investigation. And as you can see, there's quite a difference in the values that you get for both of these particular checks. So it's a convenient ability to do it. Maybe the next time you need to be doing some brewing. It's entirely up to you where you put that proficiency, but you got to remember which one you chose. So for that, I recommend that you keep track of that inside of your notes tab. Or you modify the title of this particular feature here, Whispers of the Dead, to remind you which particular skill or tool you became temporarily proficient in. So for our example here, I am currently proficient in investigation. And that's my reminder to tell me that's the one I chose the last time I used this feature. Another feature your character gains at level 3 is called Wails from the Grave, and it allows you to extend harm onto others in the field of combat whenever your character makes use of the sneak attack feature. When your character manages to hit and apply damage to the sneak attack on a given target, your character can then choose another target that is within 30 feet of and is visible to your character and roll half the total number of sneak attack dice and apply that as necrotic damage to that new target. This second attack will not require a roll, nor does the target get a saving throw, as there are so many of the dead in pretty much every location of any given campaign world that they permeate through the fabric of the world's barriers between life and death to apply that damage automatically. Additionally, the number of dice is rounded up, so if your character was rolling 5d6 as normal for a sneak attack as their normal roll, they would then roll 3d6 for the secondary roll. This feature can only be used a number of times equal to your character's proficiency bonus before they will need to complete a long rest to regain any spent uses. So let's go ahead and add this to our character's action sheet. First thing I'm going to do is drop this into place and create a new group called Phantom. I am then going to preload 5 damage entries here. And this is just so that I don't have to go through and set everything up again. Now, initially when you get this, your character is going to be able to make use of 1d6 of sneak attack damage. But when you get up in the next level there, you're going to actually be able to start doing 2d6 bits of sneak attack damage. And you can see here how this is going to go. And you may have noticed that I'm simply dropping the dice onto here. You don't actually have to hit this plus symbol to add the dice. You can just drop it into place and it will automatically create the required entry. I'm setting up the damage type as part of this particular process. The only thing you can't do is talk while counting, but that's me anyway. But you can't put a description for this particular damage effect associated with this particular group or role. So you're going to have to be very careful when you're in combat and actions that you select the right one. And if you've added it in this order, they should be in the right order itself. You'll just have to know at what levels to roll them. You could theoretically create a number of individual entries for Wails from the Grave and put in brackets the actual level. But an easy way to do this is simply to go and put in LVL S 3 to 4, and then when you hit level 5, go back and update that to level 5 to 8 to tell you that you should use the second one. And so on, so on. So from 3 to 4, you use this one. 5 to 8, you use this one. 9 to 12, you would use the third one. Levels 13 to 16, you would use the fourth one. And levels 17 to 20, you would use the last one. And that'll just make it easier for you to deal with it and not have to worry about going through and manually manipulating it each time. The last thing we need to do in relation to setting up Wails of the Grave, or Wails from the Grave, I should say, is the number of times that you can go ahead and use that. And that is going to be equal to your character's proficiency bonus, which at the level that I realized I forgot this at is Rogue level 9, is going to be 4 uses. So I'm going to go ahead and set up this to be 4 uses. So the way this is going to work in a combat situation is as follows. For the scenario's purposes, let's say the ape is within 5 feet of the vampire, giving the rogue sneak attack on the vampire. I'm going to make my attack roll. That's going to be a miss. Let's see if I can get a hit. That's going to be a miss. Am I going to get a hit this time? Yes. All right, so now that I've hit, before I roll my damage, I'm going to want to make sure that I add the sneak attack effect to my character and then apply the damage. Now, I'm not using the right one for this particular character's level, but that's fine. It's just part of the example. Now that I have done this, I can now choose, let's say ape 30 is 3 here, 2 rather, is within 30 feet of my character, and I can see that ape. I'm going to take this dice at this level and drop it into place on this particular ape. Now I've done sneak attack to that ape. And this should be 3 to 4 for now. There we go. There we go. Giving us the means to attack 2 different creatures. And you'll notice I didn't do an attack roll or a saving throw for this particular creature here. You don't need to. The damage just automatically applies through the magic of your skills. At Rogue level 9, your character gains the Tokens of the Departed feature that allows your character to capture a soul trinket from any creature that dies within 30 feet of your character and is visible to your character. In most cases, this will require a roll against the trinket table that is provided within the information sheet for the feature, so you won't need to go looking for it, but sometimes it's possible the DM will simply come up with an item and give it to your character. There is a limit to the number of these trinkets that your character can carry, and currently that is equal to your character's proficiency bonus, so at this particular level, your character will be able to carry 4 trinkets. At levels 13 and higher, your character will be able to start carrying 5 trinkets, and from levels 17 and higher, your character will be able to carry 6 trinkets. When you capture a soul into a soul trinket, you should take note of what the creature was when it died at the time that you captured that soul, as this is going to become important later on if you choose to make use of this particular trinket. However, they are not just things your character can carry around. They actually do provide your character some benefits. The first is that as long as your character is carrying around a soul trinket, they will have advantage on death saves as well as constitution-based saving throws. This does not use up the trinket, as instead the trinket is just simply giving you that advantage, and it costs nothing to do that. However, the next benefit will give you extended uses of the Wails from the Grave feature, but this will cost a soul trinket, and it will be destroyed when you choose to make use of this as an option. When your character hits and applies sneak attack damage, you can choose to destroy one of your soul trinkets and then make use of the Wails from the Grave feature without using up one of its uses. This is useful if you have no uses left, or if you just simply want to save them if you do still have any left. The last benefit is that you can choose to destroy one of the trinkets and ask that spirit that was contained within it one question. The DM is going to have to know who or what soul was stored in that particular trinket, as they were going to have to respond with the language of that particular creature, as well as ascertain what it might have known in life to be able to determine if it can answer your question or not. And it must speak in its native language. The response is also not going to be guaranteed to be truthful, as the spirit is under no obligation to be honest when it responds. And once the response has given, truthful or not, the spirit is automatically released and the trinket itself turns to dust. So the first thing I want to do is give us our death save and constitution saving throw advantage rolls. So I'm going to do that and move this into place. I'm going to add in a new effect, and I'm going to modify that effect and put this into place. Tokens of the departed, semicolon, and then it's going to be ADV death, which is going to give you advantage on death saves, semicolon, as well as ADV SAV, constitution, which is going to give you the constitution saving throws. It's going to be on your character, and it is literally going to require a use, but it really doesn't necessarily expire. So you can either set it to expire on next roll if you want it to disappear, or set it to never. You simply don't add it to your character unless you have a trinket. I will leave that entirely up to you. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can make use of things within Fantasy Grounds in order to track the number of trinkets that you have. The first is that you're going to have an item in your inventory, but that's not necessarily going to be apparent at the time that you went through and made use of an action during combat. In addition, you're going to want to know how many trinkets you can actually hold at any one moment. And for that, I recommend simply updating the title of the description. So at this particular character's level, we can hold 4 trinkets. When we get up higher in levels, say to level 13, we'll want to adjust that to 5. But we'll get back to that. And so this title is going to represent how many we can actually hold. The next bit is how many do you have? Well, that will come into your inventory as I stated earlier, but there is another option. You could theoretically modify this to say 3 and set it to rest because it really doesn't much matter, so that you have sort of an ever-growing and shrinking number of pips here that equal the number of trinkets you have. That way, when you use one, you delete it from there, and then you delete the item from your inventory. At some point later on, let's say that you have 2 left in your inventory. When there's no combat going on, you can go back and adjust that and eliminate any uses that might be there to represent that you've now lost one. Or you could just simply edit how many you have, and then when you use one, just go into here and simply delete it so that you now have 2. How you do this is going to be entirely up to you. You could use notes in order to do that, sort of like the notes thing here, and create a note. There really is innumerable options and ways that you can track this. Now I'm just going to simply go ahead and delete this for now because I don't need that there because I don't have any trinkets on this particular character. But how this is going to work is as follows. Let's say that your character is now in the process of making death saves. Well, and you have a token on your character. You can apply this effect so that as your character goes around and rolls death saves, they're going to do so with advantage. So if you look here, you're rolling with advantage. You don't have to be dead to roll a death save, just so that you know. In any event, the next thing is whenever you make a constitution-based saving throw. That should have worked. Did I misspell constitution? I know what it is. I actually forgot to put the colon in between ADV save and constitution. So now that that is there, the test is now working. So that effect is now in place and we don't need to worry too much about it. Now, in relation to the other benefit, where you could theoretically destroy a trinket and gain a use of Wails from the grave, that's literally all it is. You subtract a token from the number of tokens that you have, remove it from your inventory, and then you can go ahead and make use of Wails from the grave. But all the conditions to apply Wails from the grave still apply. You have to have made a sneak attack, and you had to have hit with it in order to be able to use it. All right, at Rogue level 13, there's a couple of minor modifications you're going to want to make. That first one is going to be increasing your maximum number of tokens that you can have. The second is going to be updating the number of uses of Wails from the grave, because that is now equal to 5 instead of 4, giving you an increase in how many times you can use this. Also at Rogue level 13, your character will gain the Ghost Walk feature, which allows your character to assume a spectral form when this feature is triggered as a bonus action. This form will last for a total of 10 minutes, unless you choose to end it early through a bonus action, and it will grant you a flying speed of 10 feet as well as the ability to hover. All attack rolls will have disadvantage against you, and your character can pass through solid objects. But if your character has to stop their movement inside of one of these objects, they will suffer 1d10 points of force damage. Additionally, when your character makes use of this feature, they will have to complete a long rest in order to regain any spent uses. But if you choose to destroy one of your soul trinkets as part of the bonus action that this feature was used in, then your character will not expend its use and can still use this feature as you normally would. Making use of a soul trinket to trigger the means of using this feature does not alter any of the abilities gained by this feature, and it will function as it normally would. So I don't see any reason why, if you have spare trinkets, you wouldn't want to use it. So let's go ahead and add this to our character's action sheet. The first is that we want to set it up in the group, and we can see that we have the 1d10 points of force damage here. We do want to add a new effect to this though, and that's going to grant disadvantage on any creature that might attack you. And it's going to be on yourself, and it will last for 10 minutes. So we can see the duration there. So how this would be used in a combat-based situation is as follows. Your character would go ahead and apply the effect of Ghost Walk. So you've chosen to use this particular feature, which, by the way, we need to set up its uses, which is 1, daily use. Now, any attack that it tries to connect with you will have disadvantage. So let me go ahead and quickly move our combat token to the vampire, and let me have that vampire target your character. I am then going to make my attack roll, and you will see that I'm rolling with 2 dice. That's because it's going to have disadvantage. Even though I still hit, there's a greater chance now that they will miss. Now, unfortunately, unlike other classes, your character is not going to gain resistance to any other incoming damage. You're still going to suffer the full amount of damage, even in this form. Now, once you use the feature, you simply tick it off so that it's no longer available to you until your character has completed a long rest. At character level 17, you will now want to increase the number of tokens of the departed that you can carry around to be a total of 6. In addition, you will want to increase the number of uses for Wails of Grave to also be 6. No other features have a change that comes into play. And finally, at Rogue level 17, your character will gain the Death's Friend feature, allowing your character to enhance the Wails of the Grave feature and gain soul trinkets without having to witness the death of a given creature, as long as your character already does not have one. In relation to the improvements made for the Wails of the Grave feature, when your character makes use of that feature, they will be able to make a second attack against the original target in addition to the second attack against their second target. So you will now be able to apply sneak attack damage to your primary target and then apply the secondary sneak attack damage to both your original target and your new target. For example, let's say that you hit your original target with sneak attack. You then made use of Wails of the Grave and decided to add additional sneak attack damage to that exact same character. You will also be able to take that damage to your secondary target as you originally would through the Wails of the Grave feature. So you've now got an extended capability with that feature. As for the free trinket, when your character completes a long rest, if your character does not already have a soul trinket, one will appear in your hands as your character wakes up. While the description states that it's the souls of the dead being drawn to your character, I also think there's another possibility in play as well, and that's death itself giving you a soul in appreciation of all the souls your character has given it. That statement made me just realize that this kind of character would do very well in a Curse of Strahd campaign. This isn't a feature you need to add to your character's action sheet because it's enhancing existing features that you already have, so you don't need to worry about that at all. But I will show an example of how Wails of the Grave would function under this particular situation. So let's say, none of these apply. Let's say that it is our turn here. I'm going to go ahead and attack that vampire. I'm going to hit this time, and before I roll, again, I'm not increasing this sneak attack damage because it's not part of this particular video, so don't worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and roll my damage and have the original sneak attack damage apply. Now what's going to happen is that I'm going to expand Wails of the Grave, and this character is level 17, so I'm going to make use of both the 5d6 necrotic damage for both this target and another target. So I'm going to throw 5d6 on the vampire, and then I'm going to throw 5d6 on, say, a 2. And that's how that particular feature now works. And that really brings us to the end of what we have to do in relation to this particular character. And rogues have a number of uses when it comes to their abilities, but it's their sneak attack damage that really shines when you consider what the subclass can do. As a result, this subclass has gained some significant advantages over other classes simply by multiplying the amount of damage they have the potential to deal by up to 1.5 times their normal amount at early levels, but almost twice as much at higher levels when you consider the double extra use of sneak attacks, bonus damage, if you will. As a DM, I'd be worried about characters playing this kind of subclass and would most likely have to increase the amount of hit points my creatures had that I'm putting in front of those particular characters if there's one of these in that particular party, specifically this subclass, as my normal averaging dice rolls would mean most encounters would simply melt in front of this particular party. However, that does bring us to the end of this video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.